Hello pharmacists and pharmacists, Aaron here, back with another video. Xiaoqiu has been causing quite a stir in the community recently after getting snuked in the beta. Despite it all, he still came out thriving. Well, at least the most he could thrive under the circumstances. But now how good is he? Who does he work best with? Or does he work at all? Before I answer those questions, I just have to say that if you do like my content, why not take a bite out of that mooncake flavored subscribe button down below. Now with the begging done, let me start y'all off right with the overview. Xiaoqiu at his core is a master debuffer who uses his Ashen Roast debuff to massively buff the team's overall damage output while dealing decent damage himself. Xiaoqiu's basic attack is a single target attack with nothing else of intrigue. Xiaoqiu's skill will deal fire blast damage to 3 enemies, with it dealing the most damage to the middle enemy. Additionally, those hit by his skill have a 100% base chance of being afflicted with a stack of Ashen Roast. When paired with his talent, which we will get to in a bit, Xiaoqiu has a chance of applying 2 stacks of Ashen Roast with his skill. Xiaoqiu's ult sets all enemies' Ashen Roast stacks to the current highest amount of Ashen Roast stacks on the field. He then lays down a field like Luocha's and deals fire damage to all enemies. Enemies in the field are afflicted with 15% vulnerability to ultimate damage. Each enemy also has a 60% chance of being afflicted with Ashen Roast on their turn, and this effect can occur up to 6 times per ultimate. This field will last for 3 turns and will be dispelled if Xiaoqiu is ever downed. Xiaoqiu's talent is the focal point of his kit, as it grants his basic attack, skill, and ultimate a 100% chance of applying a stack of Ashen Roast with a max of 5 stacks. The first stack of Ashen Roast will apply 15% vulnerability onto the enemy, with each subsequent stack adding an additional 5% vulnerability. When an enemy has Ashen Roast applied to them, they will take dot fire damage based on Xiaoqiu's attack. Xiaoqiu's technique will create a dimension that lasts 15 seconds. Upon entering battle with enemies that are in the dimension, Xiaoqiu will deal damage to each enemy, and he has a 100% chance of applying Ashen Roast to enemies in the dimension. Xiaoqiu's Ascension 2 trace immediately regenerates 15 energy to himself at the start of the battle. This lets him use his ultimate after 1 skill at the start of the end game modes, while letting his ult stay relevant after multiple different combat sessions in the overworld or in simulated universe. Xiaoqiu's Ascension 4 trace grants him more attack based on his effect hit rate. When Xiaoqiu's effect hit rate is higher than 80% or each 15% exceeded, Xiaoqiu additionally gains 60% attack up to a maximum of 240% attack at 140% effect hit rate. This nets him a massive attack buff to the point where he could potentially reach 5,000 attack or more just by himself. Xiaoqiu's Ascension 6 trace grants a buff to the field deployed from his ultimate. When the field exists, enemies entering combat will be afflicted with Ashen Roast. The number of stacks applied will match the highest number of Ashen Roast stacks possessed by any unit while the field is active, with a minimum of 1 stack being applied. This is most likely the worst trace he has, since it relies on enemies cycling in while other enemies with stacks are currently active. This will usually occur in pure fiction and against certain enemies like the swarm type ones, but otherwise this will have little benefit on his performance overall. Xiaoqiu's trace priority is pretty straightforward. His buffing and damage boost identity is laid behind his Ashen Roast stack generation. Additionally, a major part of his personal damage relies on his dot damage output. These are both impacted by his talent, so leveling it up to 10 should be the priority over leveling anything else. Only after that point should you focus on leveling his ultimate for the extra damage and damage buffing to ultimate damage. Then focus on leveling his skill and basic attack together. Xiaoqiu's rotations are quite simple, as he will usually be best utilized by using 1 skill at the start of battle into an ultimate. After that, use his skill, then a basic attack. If you need his ultimate and his energy is below 77, use skill. Otherwise, basic attack in order to generate more SP. Along with most other support units, Xiaoqiu has some high value Eidolons at his disposal. His first grants allies a 40% damage bonus buff when they attack enemies afflicted with Ashen Roast. This buff counts as an additional debuff on the enemy instead of a buff on an ally. Additionally, every time his talent applies a stack of Ashen Roast to an enemy, he will apply 1 more stack. The 40% damage bonus is incredibly powerful, as it will increase the team's damage by between 11 at the minimum to 25% at the maximum. While they might sound good, the additional stack of Ashen Roast and the additional debuff application only matters for the first turn of combat and doctor ratio respectively. Despite that, the extra raw damage bonus buff is still incredibly useful for many teams, and it will single-handedly make this his second best Eidolon available. Xiaoqiu's second Eidolon increases scaling of his dot from 180% of his attack to 480% of his attack. This would end up doubling his personal damage, enabling him to work as a great DPS unit that also boosts the damage of the team. Xiaoqiu's E3 increases the level of his basic attack and skill by 1 and 2 respectively. This offers only a 1% personal damage increase which does not lead to any meaningful time saver in any endgame mode. Jiaoqiu's E4 reduces the attack of enemies by 15% when his field is active. This increases his total debuff amount by 1 and decreases damage taken by the team. At this point though, Jiaoqiu has so many debuffs in his kit that they've become redundant. The attack reduction is good for reducing the stress on some supports to let them play more SP positive or when going sustainless, but that's only useful for some individuals who could already make do without this attack reduction. Jiaoqiu's E5 increases the level of his talent and ultimate by 2 each. This is where most of his value comes from, as it increases his dot scaling from 480% to 498%, all-type vulnerability from 35% to 38.5%, and ultimate vulnerability from 15% to 16.2%. This ends up increasing his personal damage by about 6% while also buffing the damage of the team slightly. Overall, this Eidolon is pretty good for just a simple level increase. Now time for Jiaoqiu's E6, which is incredibly overpowered. It increases the max stacks of his Ashen Roast by 4, increasing the all damage vulnerability amount from 38.5% to 60.5%. Additionally, each Ashen Roast stack will now reduce the resistances of enemies by 3% up to 27%. This is massive for Jiaoqiu and any team he's in because Resistance Shred counts as a separate damage increasing multiplier. When going from E5 to E6, Jiaoqiu will end up increasing any team's damage output by about 35 to 50%. This massive boost makes his E6 currently the strongest Eidolon in the game due to the sheer strength and numbers it provides every single main DPS, sub-DPS, and support in the game unconditionally. Jiaoqiu has some relatively high value Eidolons, with his first having the potential to contend with Robin's E1 and Ruan Mei's E1 in terms of value. His E2 is also incredibly good for supercharging his own damage output, putting him on par with some main DPS units, especially in dot-related teams. And his E6 is on a whole nother level of broken as it buffs the entire team's damage by a ludicrous amount. It goes from a good male backup support in many comps at E0 to the best unit in the game at E6. Jiaoqiu's Eidolon value is high, and if you do plan to pull for him, I suggest going for them. Good stopping points are his E1 if you want the most bang for your male support buck, E2 if planning to use him with dot specifically, or E6 if he makes your knees weak. Onto his relic options, where his best 4-piece set depends mostly on the team, but a strong start that will work well in any situation is a combo of 2-piece Messenger for the 6% speed and the 2-piece Pioneer Diver for the 12% damage bonus against debuffed targets. This combo is especially helpful for enabling Zhao to reach his speed requirements and can contend with his other best very easily. It's so good that there's really no point in using any other set combination, including the full 4-piece Pioneer set, which offers a very minor damage increase in comparison to this 2-piece combo. However, the 4-piece Prisoner in Deep Confinement set can be the exception here. This set has the highest peak of all others, though this peak can only be obtained when paired with another dot unit. This is specifically alongside those that can technically apply multiple dots like Black Swan and Kafka, or those that can detonate dots like Kafka and Guinaifen. If not used in dot teams, then many other sets would be superior. These superior sets include 2-piece Messenger plus 2-piece Pioneer, Prisoner, Musketeer, or Firesmith, a 4-piece Pioneer set, 4-piece Firesmith, and a 4-piece Musketeer set. The reason as to why I recommend Pioneer plus Messenger is because it will be better on average than the 4-piece Prisoner set. For 2-piece sets, by default, Jiaoqiu's best is Pan-Cosmic for the extra 10% effect hit rate. If not using an effect hit rate Lightcone, then this 2-piece set is mandatory on him in order to reach his effect hit rate cap. This set is also his second best when he's used as a DPS due to the extra attack percent and extra stat leniency it provides. Pan-Cosmic is so good that it should almost always be used on him, as it will lead to the largest damage ceiling in most teams. If you'd like more damage on Jiaoqiu, then you can increase it by up to 3.5% using Firmament Frontline Glamouth. If reaching the 134 speed threshold, then this set would be about 1.7% better than Pan-Cosmic, but if reaching the 160 speed threshold, then this set will be about 3.5% better. This, in all honesty, is not a large damage increase, but Firmament is much more efficient to farm for than Pan-Cosmic, whose sister set is the worst 2-piece set in the game. However, if looking to use him for his pure supportive capabilities, then Fleet of the Ageless can also work very well in situations where everyone scales with attack. This set is also much more efficient to farm for, while leading to only about a 6% personal damage loss, but due to the buffing potential, it could even be out Pan-Cosmic in terms of team damage output. For main stats, you're going to want effect hit rate on the body, speed for the boots, fire damage on the orb, and energy regen rate on the rope. If you really want to, you can swap out the effect hit rate on the body for attack if you see that you have a lot already. This won't happen for most, but it definitely could happen for those who have his signature Lightcone. Jiaoqiu is best used as a sub-DPS buffer, so when focusing on substats, the best way to build him in this manner is to reach his 140% effect hit rate cap first. You can go beyond this, but that would be insanely hard to do without his signature Lightcone, and there's no reason to ever go beyond 170% since he will apply his Ashen Roast stacks consistently at that point. Once you hit that effect hit rate threshold, look for speed. He needs to constantly attack to keep his vulnerability up, so aim for a speed of 134 at a bare minimum. But if you want the most effective damage per cycle, go for 147 speed. 161 speed is another threshold you can cross, but it takes so much effort to get and takes so much from other more important substats that it can turn out to be a damage loss in the end. Most builds would end here because of the gross amount of stats that Jiaoqiu needs to reach his 140% effect hit rate cap. But if you are using his signature Lightcone, you will usually be able to dump some more points into other stats. At this point, attack is the best to look for, with speed and crit rate being tied in value for damage, and HP, effect res, and defense being tied in value for tanking. In terms of Lightcone options, Jiaoqiu's best on average is his signature, Those Many Springs. This offers a large 60% effect hit rate to help him reach his cap, and an insane 24% vulnerability debuff that lasts for 2 turns and can be applied to multiple enemies. This Lightcone is incredible for so many dot characters that it will single-handedly increase the entire team's damage output by 24%. This is freaking insane for more supportive units without vulnerability in their base kit, like for Kafka, Sampo, and Black Swan. However, it will have less of an impact on those that already have it in their base kit, like Pela Guinaifen and Jiaoqiu himself, who each receive a team damage increase of 19.7%, 18.4%, and 17.8% respectively. Despite the lower increase, it's still incredibly powerful and would usually be about just as beneficial to the team as Jiaoqiu would, due to the consistent and powerful team-wide damage increase. Incessant Rain is another top option Jiaoqiu has at his disposal for a similar reason. It offers 24% effect hit rate and a 12% vulnerability debuff that lasts for 1 turn and only on 1 enemy, but it also comes with a 12% crit rate boost. While the debuff and stats might be worse, it is still pretty good at enabling the teams to deal more damage to a single target while also boosting Jiaoqiu's personal damage. This ends up making it relatively strong in many scenarios, to the point that it is his second best. Resolution shines as Pearls of Sweat is also very good for the additional supportive utility due to the 16% defense shred debuff it applies. It's so good that it will usually end up being better for the team than most other Lightcones, especially if there is an additional source of defense shred on the team. This Lightcone also does not come with any effect hit rate, making it very hard to build into due to Jiaoqiu's extremely high effect hit rate cap, but it is still possible, and when reached, it can outperform many other Lightcones when Jiaoqiu's personal damage is not the main focus of the team. Good Night Sleep Well is in the same boat as Resolution due to the lack of effect hit rate. However, due to the 72% damage bonus it can grant him, it can be even better than Resolution for your Jiaoqiu. This Lightcone is so strong for Jiaoqiu's personal damage that it will be on par or better than Resolution in terms of team damage output. Eyes of the Prey is a great alternative to both of these if you just cannot be bothered building into a crap ton of effect hit rate. Jiaoqiu needs 1 stat and it's freaking annoying, but this 4-star Lightcone makes building Jiaoqiu much more manageable due to the 40% effect hit rate. The extra 48% dot damage he gets as a bonus is the nice little cherry on top that makes it better than the next Lightcone on the list. Before the tutorial mission starts is in a similar boat as Eyes of the Prey, though it is just worse. Their stats are the exact same across the board except for the passive. While they both share the same effect hit rate value, Tutorial doesn't have dot damage, instead offers energy generation on each attack, but only if the enemy's defense is reduced. This extra generation is pretty good, as it allows Jiaoqiu to play SP positive, which can be more important for team damage. However, Jiaoqiu does not have defense shred in his base kit to make use of the passive. This means he needs to be run with a defense shredding unit in order to utilize this Lightcone, which would restrict his team building options. This is usually worth it though, as this Lightcone can and will truly pop off when paired with these units. The last Lightcone to mention is Solitary Healing from the Herda shop. This Lightcone offers some break effect, 48% dot damage for 2 turns after the wearer uses an ultimate, and 6 energy to the wearer if an enemy with the wearer's dot is defeated. The interesting thing about Jiaoqiu is that his field, when it's up, passively applies his dot to every enemy that enters battle. When these enemies that he's passively applying his dot to are defeated, he gets a large energy boost back. This Lightcone can be so disgustingly overpowered on him in those game modes like Pure Fiction. When an Acheron wipes a wave, Jiaoqiu immediately gets back 30 to 35 energy depending if he has an energy regenerate rope rope or not. That's an entire skill's worth of energy, and that's also for each wave. This enables Jiaoqiu to use his ultimate in pure fiction about once per turn, while also going SP positive. This light cone enables so much potential in Jiaoqiu that it can beat out his signature in personal damage by about 14%, but only in pure fiction. Now, when it comes to synergies, Jiaoqiu is best used when buffing a debuff, ultimate, or dot-oriented DPS, but most notably Acheron. Jiaoqiu is the best in slot support of Acheron, mainly due to his ability to apply debuffs both inside and outside of his own turn. This debuff application is unlike any other, which gives him the edge in these teams since debuff application directly correlates to more ults from Acheron. On top of that, Jiaoqiu boosts her damage massively due to the all-type vulnerability and ultimate vulnerability he provides, plus the fact that he's Nihility, which buffs Acheron due to her passive. Kafka is up next as a good DPS to pair alongside Jiaoqiu due to his insanely large vulnerability debuff and his ability to consistently apply a dot for Kafka to detonate. This combo is so powerful that Jiaoqiu is able to compete with both Ruan-Mei and Robin as Kafka's best soul buffing support. Jiaoqiu is not solely limited to DPS though, as he can also be used as one himself. Jiaoqiu is a decent damage dealer to the point that he can deal some great damage when buffed. It's usually not better than solely buffing the main DPS of the team though, but that's where team-wide buffing supports like Robin come into play. Jiaoqiu works so well with Robin not only because she massively boosts his and his team's attack and damage percent while also granting everyone more turns, but also because Jiaoqiu is a team-wide buffing support himself who's capable of buffing Robin's own personal damage. Jiaoqiu also likes to be built relatively fast, which means he's capable of popping her additional damage quite frequently. Robin benefits Jiaoqiu a lot too, as she can help him build more energy and generate more SP by granting him more turns. This pair will prove to be a strong and valuable core in almost any comp. Ruan-Mei is another team-wide buffing support to mention, as she enables Jiaoqiu to build into 161 speed with no drawback. She grants some of the only ways to increase the damage of dots with free damage percent and free resistance penetration, and she offers potentially longer lasting dots when he breaks due to her extending break times. She offers him quite a lot, and in turn, Jiaoqiu offers her one of the only ways to increase break damage, vulnerability. This enables him to work as a decent substitute for any support in a break team. Now, when it comes to team comps, Jiaoqiu has three main ones that he can work relatively well in. The first team to mention are comps where he supports a debuff DPS like Acheron and Ratio, with the former being a significantly better partner. As I stated before, Jiaoqiu is one of the best supports you can give your Acheron due to all of the buffs he grants her. The Good Doctor is another debuff-focused DPS that he can work well with due to his ability to guarantee Ratio's follow-up attack and because of Robin. Robin is the real glue in this comp because of her ability to buff both Ratio and Jiaoqiu, while Jiaoqiu buffs Ratio and Robin, and while Ratio makes it easier for Jiaoqiu to debuff the enemy. With Ratio in these teams, any other unit can be easily and freely paired with the main DPS due to the constant application of and a large number of debuffs that Jiaoqiu has at his disposal. The next spot he works well in is alongside ultimate DPS units like Argenti and Yunli. These two are more specific DPS characters that work well with Jiaoqiu, mainly due to the ultimate damage vulnerability that he provides. Both also happen to like Robin as a buffing support, which ends up working in Jiaoqiu's favor. But other than those few aspects, Jiaoqiu has nothing that makes him better than others in these teams, just another option. The last spot he works particularly well in is with dot teams, specifically alongside Kafka. These two work decently together due to Kafka's ability to pop Jiaoqiu's dot and Jiaoqiu's ability to massively buff Kafka's damage. Jiaoqiu will prove to be an invaluable support in these teams for his large damage buff to the point that he will perform about just as well as Ruan-Mei can. Now, I've seen a lot of doom posting online about Jiaoqiu, and now he's not even better than Pela Guinaifen at this point. So before we end off the video, I just want to take a moment and explain why that's factually incorrect and y'all are f***ing liars. Pela is the queen of defense reduction, while Jiaoqiu is the vulnerability king. For those that don't know, vulnerability is a straight up stronger debuff than defense shred, with each percent of vulnerability being about 10% better than defense shred. For example, Jiaoqiu has a 35% vulnerability debuff, so the amount of defense shred or pen needed to somewhat match it would be around 45%. This stops at the 91% value, at which point defense shred becomes the much stronger debuff until it reaches 100% where it caps. Vulnerability has no such cap though, making it the better debuff when in both larger and smaller amount. By this logic, we can assume that Jiaoqiu's 35% vulnerability would be stronger than Pela's 40 to 42% defense shred because it's less than 10% higher than the vulnerability amount. And when doing the math, Yeah, that checks out. Xiaoshu's 35% vulnerability directly translates to a 35% damage increase, while the 42% defense shred translates to only about a 21% damage increase. Even if we put the ball in Pela's court and give each unit the resolution light cone, which would scale better with Pela's additional defense shred debuff, Xiaoshu still stands on top with about a 47% damage increase, while Pela offers about a 44% damage increase. The only time Pela is specifically better at increasing the team's damage over Xiaoshu is during those 2 turns at the start of battle after she used her technique, where her damage increase would be about 48% at base and 69% with resolution. But then again, that's just the first 2 turns of the fight, and that's not taking into account Xiaoshu's ultimate vulnerability and damage that scales off of his 5000 attack stat. If we include these factors, Xiaoshu's teams have the potential to deal up to 25% more damage than most teams that Pela is a part of. A much more relatable comparison to Jiaoqiu would be Guinaifen. Both are fire dot nihility units that offer vulnerability as their main way of buffing. They each also have decent raw damage, good buffing potential, and a ridiculous amount of debuffs at their disposal. However, Guinaifen offers just less across the board. Her vulnerability debuff stacks only when burn deals damage, and it can stack up to 30.4% once at E6. This nets her about 70% the vulnerability buff that Xiaoshu has on average, and she can only apply her vulnerability to 3 enemies at most, while going skill point negative, unlike Xiaoshu, who can apply his on all enemies passively. She also has nowhere near Xiaoshu's impact to a team if she's not at E6, since she loses out on her extra vulnerability stack. This would lead to a lower vulnerability cap, a lower vulnerability average, and a lower personal damage output. If they each had a similar level of investment, Xiaoshu would beat out Guinaifen in terms of personal damage by about 2%, and that's not including his stronger on average debuff. The point at which Guinaifen becomes better than Xiaoshu is once she has his signature light cone, but even at that point, she only beats him by 0.6% to 6.9%, and that's not even including the team damage loss you'd receive from the loss in vulnerability and by using a relatively SP negative unit. Jiaoqiu seems super underrated right now for almost no reason. He's a relatively strong unit that will enable your team to deal a tremendous amount more damage than many other 4-star support units can. He's even able to compete with the current best character in the game, Ruan Mei, in some of her best spots. Jiaoqiu is a strong unit. Is he the best? Absolutely not, but he will do a lot for your account if you are looking to upgrade any debuff, dot, or ultimate based teams. But that's all I have to say on Jiaoqiu for now. Now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of him? Do you plan to get him? What teams do you plan to use with him? Tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. With that, I will get out of your hair. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!